Rocky Bleier was an important piece of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty. During his time as a Steeler, the team won 4 Super Bowls in a 6-year span. While he wasn't outstanding at any one skill, Rocky was a stout blocker, a capable runner, and a fine receiver out of the backfield. However, few know the full story of the path that Rocky Bleier took from being a 16th round draft pick to becoming one of the most beloved players in Pittsburgh Steelers history. Even fewer still knew that Rocky was, and is, a Vietnam veteran who had seen the horrors of war firsthand. Watch this video to hear Bleier's story of perseverance and dedication. Robert Patrick Rocky Bleier was born March 5, 1946 in Appleton, Wisconsin. He got his nickname Rocky from when his father would tell people that Robert looked like a little rock while sitting in his crib. After that, guys would ask his father, "How's that little rock of yours?" and the name stuck. Rocky was a star athlete at Xavier High School, excelling in football, basketball, and track. In football, he was an all-state running back and also played linebacker and defensive back. After scoring 21 touchdowns in his senior year, after graduating high school, Rocky decided to attend Notre Dame. While there, the Fighting Irish won the NCAA football championship in 1966. In 1967, Rocky was named the Notre Dame team's captain. After 3 seasons in college, Rocky had rushed for 786 yards and 11 touchdowns. He'd also caught passes for an additional 3 touchdowns. January 31st, 1968 was the final day of the 1968 NFL-AFL draft. After getting tired of waiting by the phone to hear whether he'd been drafted or not, Rocky went and had a few beers. Then, after someone turned on the 10 o'clock news, he heard that he'd been drafted in the 16th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rocky had mixed emotions when he heard that. Should he have been happy that he was even drafted, or should he be disappointed by the fact that not only was he drafted late in the draft, he was drafted by a sorry team like the Pittsburgh Steelers? In 1967, the Steelers went 4-9-1, and the franchise hadn't had a winning season since 1963. Ultimately, Rocky was honest with himself. He wasn't a big back weighing 180 pounds. He also wasn't fast, as he only ran a 4.8 40-yard dash, and that was when he was wearing shorts. He'd later find out that the Steelers scouts had their own similar thoughts about him. According to notes, the team thought that he'd be a better flanker than he was as a running back. Even then, he was given a slim chance to even make the team. While he had good hands and he was a dependable receiver, his size was an issue. On top of that, he didn't have speed, and he only had average balance and quickness. Finally, the Steelers thought that he was only an average blocker. One scout even thought that Rocky would be better at defensive back because of how he hit when he blocked. Overall, the feeling was that Rocky didn't have a single outstanding talent that would make him a good prospect. As it was, the Steelers projected that Rocky needed to put on weight, pushing closer to 200 pounds, and he also needed to really be able to run a 4.8 40. The team decided that if he was any smaller or even a little bit slower, he couldn't make it in the NFL. While he was training to make the Steelers team prior to reporting to camp, Rocky had gotten his weight up to 205 pounds, and that was good. However, the bad news was that he now ran the 40-yard dash in 5 seconds flat. Ugh. On top of that, he was in competition with numerous other backs to make the team, including incumbent players and other rookies like himself. Bleier also experienced culture shock. When he first got into a training camp scrimmage, Rocky said in the huddle, "Come on guys, let's go, let's get after it." One veteran looked at him and said, "Look, cut out the college rah-rah-ish. Just do your job, kid. That's what you're getting paid for." Reflecting, Rocky said that he felt the fundamentals that he'd learned at Notre Dame were the primary reason he made the Steelers squad in 1968. Having said that, once the regular season began, Rocky didn't see much action, and he only rushed 14 times for 53 yards. The Steelers had an awful year, going 2-11-1. Following the season, head coach Bill Austin was fired, and he was replaced by some guy named Chuck Noll. As for Rocky, after some back and forth between the state of Wisconsin and the state of Pennsylvania, he was drafted into the United States Army. Once the season was over, he reported to Fort Gordon, Georgia for basic training. While he was there, the screaming and the military routine jangled Rocky's nerves. As a result, he began smoking, and doing that allowed him to take a 10-minute smoke break every hour. While he was in basic training, spit shining his boots, he longingly watched the New York Jets upset the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. Also while in basic training, Bleier found out that he'd been assigned to infantry, and this guaranteed that he'd be going to Vietnam after his basic training was over. When it was time to ship out, Rocky flew from Travis Air Force Base, then ultimately from Guam to Saigon. Later, he rode a helicopter to his assignment at the 196th Light Infantry Brigade, Company C. While there, he slept in a bunker that had been dug 3 to 4 feet into the ground. The floor was covered with cardboard, and his bed was an air mattress that lay on top of a wooden pallet. For the first 100 days that he was in country, Rocky didn't see any Viet Cong or North Vietnamese Army, who were also known as the NVA. Then, in July of 1969, mortar attacks started happening every evening. Then came August 20th, 1969. While crossing a rice paddy, Bleier's platoon was ambushed by the North Vietnamese. Initially, enemy fire wounded Bleier in his left thigh. At first, the wound just felt like a dull thud, but then his leg began to sting, and when he looked down, he saw blood gushing from 2 different holes. After putting a gauze patch on his wound, Rocky, using another soldier to tell him the results of his firings, shot 36 rounds with his launcher to cover his company while they set up a counteroffensive. Afterwards, Bleier lay on the ground for about 90 minutes, a mere 75 yards away from the enemy. He then prayed to God that he would get him out of this situation. In return, Rocky promised to give his life to God to do with whatever he would. Less than 5 minutes later, a soldier, Doc, came to Rocky and told him, "You and I are getting out of here." Together, they crawled about 150 yards to where the rest of the company was. Soon, though, enemy fire would light up the area using hand grenades. Without a weapon and a limited ability to move due to his wound, Rocky was helpless. Soon, Rocky saw a grenade land. It hit another soldier, but bounced off him without going off. The grenade was deflected towards Rocky, and it landed at his feet. To try and get away from it, he crouched to jump forward, and that's when the grenade exploded. We're going to take a time out from our story to ask you to like, subscribe, share, comment, hit that notification bell, and repeat when it comes to our videos. Now, back to our story. A medic cut off Rocky's boot, then tied a sterile gauze around his foot. That was all he could do for him for the time being. Meanwhile, as the battle raged, all Rocky could do was just lie there. Via radio, his company found out that they were outnumbered 4-1 by the enemy. Despite the odds, help finally arrived, and Rocky was carried by fellow soldiers about 2 miles to get him transported to where he could receive medical care. For a time, one soldier by himself carried Rocky fireman style. Between he and other soldiers, it took them about 6 hours to carry Rocky over that 2-mile distance. After having been shot 14 hours earlier, Rocky finally was able to get some medication for his pain. However, it didn't do anything to help. In fact, he was screaming for more medication right after he had received the first dose. Meanwhile, he had to sit and wait 2 hours for the next medevac to come and pick him up. When he finally got that second shot that he'd been screaming for, he began to feel a little better. Early the next morning, Rocky went into surgery. The surgeons pulled out more than 100 pieces of shrapnel from his body. While he was in the hospital, he didn't have an appetite, and as a result, he would wind up losing 45 pounds. When talking to one of his doctors, it was explained to Rocky that his steel-toed boots had saved his foot. Along with sending shrapnel up both his legs, the grenade blast had also shattered bones in his right foot. However, with therapy, the doctor believed that Rocky could walk normally again. Upon speaking to still another doctor, Rocky asked if he thought that he could ever resume his football career. Rocky asked the doctor for a straight answer. The doctor gave him one. "Rocky, you won't be able to play again. It's impossible," he said. Rocky, of course, heard what the doctor said. He just didn't put too much stock in it. On September the 14th, 1969, Rocky was flown back to America, landing at Fort Riley in Kansas. In October, he was given a 31-day leave from the Army. During that time, he got a chance to go to Pittsburgh to participate in the Alumni Weekend. When he got a chance to see Steelers owner Art Rooney, the owner told Rocky to get in shape and that he would take care of the rest. In January of 1970, doctors told Rocky that he needed another operation on his foot. Later, he'd had to have yet another surgery to remove bone spurs from around his second toe. Afterwards, he had to go through therapy to regain strength and flexibility in his toe. After the surgery, he underwent shock therapy, having a technician touch the bottom of his toe with an electrode. The idea was to try and induce movement in a mind-body reaction. After that didn't work, the next move was to use a slingshot-style device that had a rubber band that went over his toe and pulled it back as he slept. That didn't work either. In fact, nothing worked, and Rocky's toes refused to move. Finally, the time came for Rocky to test himself to see exactly what he could do. He went running, but he was only able to go about a quarter of a mile before he collapsed. He couldn't find a spot on his foot that allowed him to run without pain. He lay on the ground crying, thinking that his NFL career might really be over. Despite that thought, he refused to give up. However, one thing that no amount of effort would change was what had happened to his right foot. The grenade explosion had taken a half shoe size off of Bleier's right foot with it. From that day forward, Rocky would have to wear a size 10.5 shoe on his left foot and a size 10 on his right. Meanwhile, Steelers training camp was only 3 months away. Rocky put himself on a rigid workout schedule. For the next 3 months, he woke up at 5:30 a.m., ran a few miles, then went to work. In the evenings after work, he lifted weights from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, then ran wind sprints for an hour. Slowly but surely, he was getting stronger, and it came time for him to report to training camp. He was facing uphill odds as there were 9 running backs in camp. However, there were only 5 spots open on the roster. While Rocky began running 40-yard dashes, he was running flat-footed while trying to use the outside edge of his right shoe. He couldn't get up on his toes because it was too painful to bend them back. This had him running a 6-second 40-yard dash. He'd never make it like that. On top of everything else, he still had a noticeable limp. Teammates would look at him and just shake their heads. "Why is he doing this to himself?" they'd say. "He's just wasting his time. He ought to get out and do something else," others believed. Finally, team doctors asked Steelers Vice President Dan Rooney, Art's brother, to make Rocky stop trying. Despite that, Bleier insisted on trying just a little bit longer. Then, 1 week before the season opener, Rocky was summoned to Coach Chuck Noll's office. Noll told Rocky that he was waiving him. However, Noll thought that no one would claim him, meaning that Rocky would become a free agent. Finally, Noll told him that if he still wanted to play football, he should go home and try to get in shape for next season. Driving home from Noll's office, Rocky was in tears. His football career was over. Or was it? The next morning, Bleier got a call from Dan Rooney. Rooney told him that instead of waiving him, the Steelers were putting him on the injured reserve list. That would allow him to have another operation, then rejoin the team later. After he got off the phone, Rocky thanked the Lord and he jumped at the opportunity to stay with the Steelers. Surgery found that a large piece of shrapnel had made its way to the skin surface of his fourth toe. This is what was causing the pain that Rocky kept feeling. While operating, the doctor also ripped out scar tissue around Rocky's other toes. Once he began rehabilitation, exercising would keep the scar tissue from reforming. Rocky recuperated well enough to be activated for the final game of the 1970 season. That off-season, Rocky kept on training, running, lifting weights, and sprinting every day. When he came to camp in 1971, he had to battle 3 other backs for one spot on the roster. Bleier got injured immediately, and he had to miss 2 weeks of practice. Meanwhile, Coach Noll beseeched the team doctor to encourage Rocky to retire from football. Of course, Rocky resisted that notion. Shortly after that, Noll himself suggested that Rocky retire. This time, Rocky begged for a little more time, which Noll granted. Somehow, Bleier was still around while 2 competitors were cut. That left only him and 1 other player for that final spot. But it wasn't meant to be. Just as it happened to him 1 year earlier, Rocky was called in to meet with Coach Noll. Again, Noll told Rocky that he was being put on waivers. Again, Noll figured that no one would claim Bleier. This time, though, the Steelers would bring him back on their taxi squad. After a couple of games and an unusual move to get around league protocol, Rocky was restored to the active roster. Bleier didn't do much during the season, returning 1 kickoff for 21 yards, fair catching 1 punt, and adding 2 tackles. In that offseason, Rocky made some adjustments to his training. He began practicing yoga to relieve tightness in his lower back, hamstrings, and his quads. He also added an additional running session to his workouts to improve his speed. His hard work showed dividends immediately when he reported to camp in 1972. To the shock of everyone, Bleier was running a 4.6 40. It was one thing for a maturing young player to get faster, but not for a 26-year-old veteran like Rocky to do it. Coach Noll was beside himself when he saw this, and he felt that Rocky had done a great job of getting himself together. Rocky made the team coming out of camp. He would finish that season with 1 carry for 17 yards. Heading into the 1973 season, Rocky had reached his 5th year in the league, which made him eligible for an NFL pension. This was a big deal to him, and in fact, now that he'd achieved that goal, Rocky was strongly considering retiring following the 1973 season. However, he came to camp in the best shape of his life. He'd gotten his weight to 216 pounds, but still retained his quickness. He was also one of the strongest players on the team. When the season started, Bleier did most of his work on special teams, molding himself into one of the best in the league. In the 1974 season, Rocky finally got a chance to contribute on the offensive side of the ball. He started his first game and scored the first touchdown of his NFL career. And the Pittsburgh Steelers made it to their first Super Bowl. They topped off the year by winning their first title by beating the Minnesota Vikings 16-6 in Super Bowl IX. The Steelers were repeat as champions in 1975, beating the Dallas Cowboys 21-17 in Super Bowl X. In the 1976 season, Rocky had his first and only 1,000-yard season. He added 24 receptions and 294 receiving yards for good measure. The 1978 season saw Rocky and the Steelers return to the top as they won Super Bowl XIII over the Dallas Cowboys. The victory allowed the Steelers to become the first team to ever win 3 Super Bowls. Then the Steelers came back and did it again in 1979, winning Super Bowl XIV over the Los Angeles Rams. In 1980, a made-for-TV movie about Rocky's life aired on ABC Network. Called Fighting Back, the Rocky Bleier story, the movie starred Robert Urich in the title role. The movie aired on December 7, 1980. A little over 2 weeks later, on December 22, 1980, Rocky played his final game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. At age 34, he retired following the season. Bleier finished his 11-year career having rushed for 3,865 yards and 23 touchdowns. He also caught 136 passes for 1,294 yards and an additional 2 touchdowns. Bleier also was a 4-time Super Bowl champion. While the statistics from Rocky's career are not necessarily great or outstanding, Rocky's story is about so much more than football. The game was just a device that was used to tell the true story about a man that went to war to fight for his country. Then, after becoming wounded, he came back home to fight for himself. Along the way, he ignored naysayers, critics, and even his own self-doubt to craft a story of dedication and overcoming odds that's inspiring to people from all walks of life. Did you ever get a chance to see Rocky Bleier play? Were you aware that he was a military veteran? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video, and we hope you enjoyed this story about Rocky Bleier, someone we wanted to pay respect to as a military veteran. Be on the lookout for more of our stories during the month of November as we continue to bring attention to athletes who have served their country. Thanks again, and see you soon.